My name is Robin Lady. By day, I'm the Director of Student Services at Chantilly High School. Give you a little brief background on me. I'm a product of Fairfax County Public Schools, undergraduate William Mary. I did my master's at UVA in school counseling. Worked as a school counselor for years, found myself at Thomas Jefferson High School for Math, Science, and Technology, and thought, wow, they've got an advantage over everybody. If I picked up the phone and called any college in the country, probably in the world, they took my phone call because they wanted my kids. So after spending 4 years there, I decided it kind of wasn't fair that they kind of had all the inside scoop and they were well versed in the college admissions process. So I moved to what we call a base school in Fairfax County. I'm at Chantilly now. As a director, I have 11 counselors under me, very active in college admissions and basically passionate about it and believe so strongly in the transformative power of a college education for students. So have a lot of colleagues on the other side of the desk. So a lot of what I'm going to share today is not just sort of my opinion. It's grown through my involvement in getting to know, deans and associate deans and whatnot in all the admissions offices around, not just the state of Virginia, but around the country. So let's start with a little humor. This summer, my parents are sending me to college application camp, admissions essay writing camp, and SAT score improvement camp, and I'm sending them to Camp Get a Grip. We need a little levity in this process, people. Your kids are more anxious about this than you can ever imagine. Their lack of effort, not even effort, but their lack of movement, and I hate to say this, but a lot of times, boys are the hardest to read because they're so cool. Girls are a little bit more forthcoming and transparent, but they are so anxious, so nervous because of the hype, and we need to calm it, okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit about admissions by the numbers. First of all, a few facts. There are more kids applying to college today than ever before. And my PowerPoint will be made available, so don't get mired down and taking copious notes. And I usually do this in about an hour and 15 minutes, and I'm going to have to speak fast, so hang with me. Colleges want to see the students have challenged themselves. That's a big thing. I don't know where you are in the continuum, what grade your students are in, but the bottom line is what colleges want is they want students to appropriately challenge themselves, not over-challenge themselves. Okay, that vanity transcript that has a bunch of honors, AP, IB, Cambridge courses, but you're getting C's, college goes, kid doesn't have good judgment. Not good judgment to do that and not earn really an average of at least a B average, okay? We want you to take advanced coursework. If you get a C in the one advanced coursework, maybe it's English, and you balance it with standard coursework or college prep coursework in math and science, that's fine, all right? Some kids can take full IB. That's the appropriate challenge for them. Some of our kids have IEPs. The appropriate challenge for them is just English, math, science, social studies every year. Maybe 2 years of foreign language, okay? We're talking about appropriate challenge. We don't want waterboard kids, all right? But we also don't want them to underachieve. So majority of students attending Virginia colleges are from Northern Virginia. A lot of people say, oh, it's not fair if we live down in Dinwiddie or Short Pump or name some small southern town in Virginia, then we get into our state university. But we're up here and we're right next to Fairfax, or, our kids are smarter. Listen, to whom much is given, much is expected, okay? The kids in Southern Virginia might only have 3 AP classes in their school, all right? And the first day of hunting season, they're hunting, okay? It's a different way of life. And if you really feel that way, I say to parents, move. Pick up and move. But you don't want to move because you like it here. So I'm going to tell you the process is extremely fair to all of our students. And we do fill the seats in most of our state schools. Between Loudoun, Prince William, Fairfax, Arlington, we get lots of seats. Our kids do very well. It's about getting out, not just getting in, okay? A lot of kids get in, but if you look at national data, they're not finishing. It is way less, I don't even know what it is, I should know, I should be able to quote it, but it's less than 50% who start finish, okay? No, period. Period. Not in 4 years. And even my TJ kids, when I was at TJ, they all got in, they didn't all finish for a variety of reasons, okay? And I will put this on you. I don't know you as parents, but stop being helicopter parents, okay? The sooner your kids can fail, the better they are in the long run. The majority of our students from this area who don't succeed in college, it's not because they're not academically ready. They're not social emotionally ready, okay? You keep running to rescue them. Stop. Stop rescuing them. Let them deal with it. I know I read about a school, I don't even know where it is in the country, that finally said, nobody can bring anything up to the school after it starts. You can't bring them lunch, you can't bring their book report, you can't bring their poster board, you can't come and bring anything. They made it a rule. Could you imagine how empowering that would be? See, the problem is you feel like a bad parent because your neighbor did it, right? We got to deal with that and temper it. So some college admissions by the numbers. I normally sort of let these fly in, but here's the reality. There's 3,600 2- and 4-year colleges in the country. 2,000 of them are 4-year schools. Of those, only 135 admit fewer than 50% of their applicants. That's not Jay Matthews in the Washington Post sensationalizing it, right? 135 out of 2,000 admit fewer than 50%. Then you move on down to the number of 4-year colleges admit fewer and have an SAT average of 1250 or above out of 1,600. That's just 50 schools. That's a small number, okay? Next one, number of schools that admit fewer than 25% with a 1250 or above, 24. How many Virginia schools do you think are in that 24? There's one. Anyone want to take a guess?
UVA. Virginia Tech.
Washington Lee. Okay? UVA and William & Mary are not in there. Now, good. Kids self-select, okay? So the right kids should be applying to the right schools, but we fare very well. And again, we're in the top 50. We're lucky. The other thing I tell people is, I hate when someone says, oh, we can't get into our state school. Well, you could if we named them the way that Pennsylvania does or North Carolina does. If we said that this is the University of Virginia at Radford or University of Virginia at Longwood, you'd be getting into your state school, okay? But people get mired in our only state school is this one or these three. You can't think that way. We are rich in our schools here. Every one of our state institutions is excellent. And if you need to go walk on campuses and take tours and sort of see that and feel that for yourself. So some objectives. I want to talk to you about how colleges read files today, learn how to help students get their thoughts organized and ready to actually complete a college application. We're going to talk about how kids can brainstorm and write effective personal essays. Best practices for letters of rec, that's a really touchy thing, but I'm going to touch on it because it's important, and also talk about honors and activities, okay? So real quick, and I don't have a lot of time, but I would love for you to look at these factors in the college admissions process and rank them on a piece of paper from 1 to 12, what you think is the most important. NACAC is the National Association for College Admissions Counseling. NACAC surveys all of the member institutions on the college side of the desk every year and says, what is most important when you're making an admissions decision on a student? They take that and they create a chart, which I'm going to put up here in a minute, to tell you the order of their importance. So I'm going to challenge you to think about it quickly. I'll go through them. Admissions test scores, those are SAT, ACT, basically. Those are your admissions test scores. Grades in all courses, that's exactly what it means, all courses. It includes PE, it includes band, it includes psychology, whatever a student takes. Counselor recommendation, essay, teacher rec, class rank. Do you do class rank? Okay, we don't do that in Fairfax. I'm sorry that you do, but that's a Prince William issue. Bottom line is, from a college perspective, when you give a college a data point, they will use the data point. And I say that just because Fairfax got away from it because our kids are good. Your kids are good, all right? But when a parent pushes me in Fairfax for a rank, their eyes get really big because they're like, really? She's not in the top 50%? I'm like, sorry. She's got a 3.0, but at this school, it's not top 50%. So anywho, we don't do it, but you do, so they're going to use it. Grades in college prep. College prep is defined two ways. College prep is core disciplines, English, math, science, social studies, world language. College prep for William & Mary UVA is honors and AP or IB or Cambridge in every one of those courses, okay? If an appropriate school, a trajectory for your student is a Radford or a Longwood, just take English, math, science, social studies, world language every year. You don't have to take honors. You don't have to take AP, IB. Just take the course, okay? Advance yourself in mathematics. Advance yourself in science. Don't look at the Virginia State Diploma and say, well, 2 years of a world language plus 2 years of a different language fulfills the advanced studies requirement. No, take language to the 4th year, especially if you start it in middle school. Don't start it in middle school to be done with it in 10th grade. That's not the kind of thinking, right? Start it because you're going to continue it. Extracurriculars, AP and IB test scores, demonstrated interest, that's an interesting one. Some schools track that. I am not aware of any Virginia schools that track it, but there are schools in other states that track it. Emory tracks it, Elon tracks it. And here's the thing, you can ask the school. If you're sitting at a presentation at Elon and you say, hey, do you track demonstrated interest? And they say yes. Then the next question is, how? Right? How do they track it? Do I have to visit? Is it by me being on your email list? How do you track my interest? Because if they're going to track it, it's going to play into the admissions process. But again, Virginia schools don't do it. Interview and strength of curriculum. I'm going to reveal the answers because I don't have time to ask you all what you think. All right, grades in college prep, number 1. Okay, your grades in those college prep courses, most important. Number 2, strength of curriculum, and they go hand in hand. Okay, if I want to go to a really selective school, I'm taking really hard classes, but I'm also getting A's in them, or B pluses. All right, or if I'm going to go to something on a different tier, I'm again taking those core disciplines. Admissions test scores, number 3, that's your SATs and your ACTs. And they're important, but they're probably, you think they're more important than they really are to colleges, but they're probably a little more important to colleges than they want to admit to you. I know that if you're not aware of the test optional website, a lot of schools are going to test optional. A lot of schools are finding out that a student's performance in the high school is actually a better predictor of college success. And so if they have a certain minimum GPA, some students can opt out of the actual standardized test. Okay? And there's a pretty lengthy list of schools that are going to that. CNU does it, VCU does it. I'm trying to think of in-state schools that do it. And why? It helps their data points. They're going to get a good kid who maybe isn't a good tester, and if you send the test, they have to go in their average. But if you just don't send the test, it helps their average. So it's a win-win. Then it comes to grades in all courses. That's when everything does matter, okay? So, you know, when students, let me say this too. Weighted classes, the one thing you got to tell your students is, just because AP US History gets an extra point, that B does not become an A. In the world of academia, it's a B. In your calculation, it might be a 4, but in the world of academia, it's a B. We have this thing in education as educators that we know what A work is, what B work is, what C work is. When Fairfax changed their grading scale, what, 8 years ago, which is kind of laughable, we don't have more A's because teachers went, well, okay, now an A is a 90 to 100. I'm still looking for a standard, right? We don't have more A's, all right? So think about that. You got to tell kids they can't start looking at a B plus going, well, it's an honors class, Mom, so it's really an A. No, it's a B plus, okay? And a lot of colleges, actually, they're not looking at your GPA because there's so many flavors of GPAs. If you want to go and learn about that kind of stuff, read Dean Jay's blog at UVA because she blogs about it all the time, about how she just read an application with a 12.0 scale or just read an application with a 15-point scale or whatever. I mean, it's just, there's all kinds of flavors of how schools do grading out in the country and the world. Then we get into essay, highest ranked thing on the list that's totally in the student's control up until they hit submit on an application. Okay, so we're going to talk about that essay because it's very important. Student interest. When I started doing this, teaching probably about 8 or 9 years ago, that was near the bottom. But because so many kids are applying to college, to be honest, we have a lot of inflated grade point averages. They're trying to figure out who really likes us. You know, it's kind of like you think about it, right? It's prom time, right? You want to ask the girl who's going to say yes. You don't want to be the bridesmaid, right, 5 times. And colleges they're getting into that business a little bit. Same thing with interviews, which have gone up a little bit, but that's a problem because it's a fiscal problem, right? If I'm going to do an interview, I got to have people to do it. In our state schools, by the way, it's kind of laughable that we call them state schools because the amount of money they get from our state is minimal, just like our public school system. So, on a different note, I hope you blow up, VDOE and the state and tell them to please fund our schools because we're in crisis with the amount of money they don't send to Northern Virginia. It's pretty bad. Teacher rec, counselor letter, class rank, and then it goes on down. Counselor letters are important. I want to bring up to you the second column because the next thing I'm going to talk about is how colleges read files, and that's going to be significant because the second column, which has importance, all of a sudden the essay, the teacher letter, the counselor letters, they have a higher percentage because for most selective schools, they're a big deal. But for a lot of schools that do a data-driven read, they're not as big a deal. So what's missing? GPA. Literally, it's not on the list. And that's because they don't look at it. They're going to evaluate a transcript. They're not looking at a GPA. GPAs matter once a kid's admitted and they send it down to financial aid and they go, oh, if you have a 3.5 and a 1,200, you get $5,000. So GPAs matter at that part of the game, but they don't matter as much in the early stages of the game because they're evaluating the transcript, and that's because we have so many different flavors of GPAs. So how do colleges read files? Data-driven read, okay? It's pretty simple. When a student looks at an application, these particular ones do not ask for an essay. They don't ask for a letter of rec. They don't even really ask you what you did with your time inside or outside of school. It's kind of like getting a mortgage, right? I get your transcript, I get your test scores, I'm going to plot you on a grid, and you're admitted, you're denied, or you're waitlisted. And that's why some schools will do on-site admissions, okay? Radford, Longwood, Old Dominion, they come into our high schools, they'll do an on-site evaluation of a kid right there. Now, some kids that won't be admitted on-site might still be admitted when they do look at other variables. But they're starting out as a purely data-driven, and if you're high enough in their data points, you're in. So the other end of the continuum is a whole read, okay? These are schools like UVA, like William & Mary, even Christopher Newport, a lot of our schools, even Virginia Tech, okay? 10 years ago, Virginia Tech barely had a personal statement. Now they've got 3 or 4 pieces of writing, okay? Why? Because they want a bigger glimpse into who the student is. So the whole read schools, I say to kids, for those, your data points get you read. Okay, if you're not in the data realm for William & Mary, they're gonna read your entire file. It's an ethical thing, and they do it. They're gonna read your entire file. But they're really gonna focus on it if you're, kind of in the running for admissions, because you've got the other things we talked about in the previous slide: strength of curriculum, good grades, good scores. But what gets you in, what gets you picked, among a lot of kids that have that, are these other aspects of the application, which is teacher letter, counselor letter, essays, and then your activities and honor sections, okay? So, yeah, I'm gonna try. But do you want to ask a quick one?
Yeah, colleges say that standardized test scores are optional, but what does that do to the data-driven read in reality?
Well, colleges that she's asking about test optional. Colleges that do test optional are often asking for more components, but they're clearly just placing more emphasis on the performance of the student in the high school. So if they don't ask for it, it's beneficial to a kid. I mean, if you're not a good test taker, that's a good thing. So when it comes to completing a college application, and I'm going to try to stay on script here, but if you or your student have never looked at an application, go and get a fake account for Common App. You need to look at every component. You need to look at the character limitations on the honors and activities section. You need to look at the teacher rec. What are teachers checking on boxes about you? You need to download that. Look at some of those essay questions. Or go to a school that may be of interest that doesn't take the Common App, okay? But when it comes time to start to prepare to complete an application, and I do this a lot with my students, you could do it every year, but certainly spring of junior year, I say take out a blank piece of paper or Word document, and mom, dad, kid, sibling, independent of each other, write down everything you want a college to know if you could go to Starbucks for an hour. Talk about yourself, or talk about your sister, talk about your son or daughter. What do you want them to know? Write it all down. So oftentimes when I do this with students, they start listing things like this, all right? GPA, test scores, activities. Really, most colleges are going to get that because they're asking for it in their application. So what I'm trying to really pull from kids is the other parts of who they are. What are their definitive traits? So it's not about what they've done. It might be why. Why did you do marching band for 4 years? What did that mean to you? How did it grow you? How did it change you? What are your definitive traits? What are your core beliefs? Are you intensely loyal? Are you passionate? Are you, the shy person, but, are you the person that brings people together? Are you the kid who's, not an elected leader, but a natural leader? Like, what are the other layers to this that I can't just type in and say I was on the band, I was in the band, or I was on the basketball team? So basically, it's sort of like cyber white space. I'm trying to get kids to think of it, and then once you've done your list, I want you to share your list with each other and come up with one list. Because sometimes mom or dad will think of something that the other people didn't. So come up with one list, it's your list, okay? Then when you go to complete the application, you start checking where you got it in, all right? And how you strategically got it into the application. Because here's the thing, our kids are doing a ton of stuff. And they're also doing a lot of independent learning that we don't give them any credit for in school, okay? You've got kids that are on that net, they're fascinated with something, okay? I mean, I had a kid when I was a TJ who would write the next Harry Potter book, like literally, to try and guess what she was going to do. Right? I had another kid, never played baseball, but I couldn't stump him ever with a baseball fact. I had a kid who never took astronomy, but had, moon journals, got a telescope when she was like in 6th grade, and then just sort of would save her money and got better ones, and just loved this whole, solar system and everything she was doing. That wasn't anywhere on a transcript, but it helped define and helped explain who she was. So we're trying to figure out, from a marketing perspective, how do you market yourself? How do you market your kid? Is there a slogan? Are there a few things you want to definitely make sure that the college understands about your kid when they're done with the application? The goal is to have it read like a book. I want kids to be a page turner, okay? And what I mean by that, one of the mistakes a lot of parents make and kids make is too many letters of recommendation. I don't care who you know. I don't care how special or important they are. Unless there's a building named after them on campus, it's really not going to help you too much. You do what the college says, and when you start breaking their rules and giving them more letters of rec, guess what? You're wasting their time because they're up till midnight reading apps every day, and when you give them 2 more letters, now you've agitated them, okay? And again, is it new information? If every letter says the same thing, Johnny's great, got great character, oh, what a great person, oh man, I'd love for my daughter to marry him. But that, you start to, I'm done, right? I want you to be a page turner. I want you to keep pulling me in and pulling me in. It needs to connect, but don't be redundant, because then you're starting to lose me. So let's talk about the student voice. We're going to go over these 3 different components of an application. We'll start about the student voice in the essay first. So as we learned in the NACAC rankings, it's the highest ranked item that's within the student's control, because it's number 5. I challenge you to memorize those top 5 or top 7, because it's in counselor and teacher letter, but it's important. So personal statement, what is it? I get this question a lot. Is the personal statement an essay? Yeah. I mean, colleges will use different terminology, but the bottom line, and some colleges have an open-ended statement. Here in this space, give us a personal statement. My niece applied to Clemson. She called me. She said, "Hey, Robin, what do I put there?" So I sent her some prompts. And I said, basically, use this to help narrow down your focus about what they're looking for. The topic is always the kid. That's the fascinating thing. There's so many topics that can pull a kid into talking about a teacher they loved. And I'm like, God, I wish I could go have that teacher. But I learned nothing about you, or a grandparent, or a trip they took, or whatever. I mean, the question is basically a doorway into the kid, right? They want to know about the student. And I have a rule when I tell kids, when you're done writing your essay, take out 2 highlighters. With one, highlight everything about you, and the other, highlight everything about the topic. Like, how far out did you get pulled away? And it should be about 3/4 you. And normally, the first time they do it, it's the reverse. It's about 3/4 about what the topic was, and they didn't reveal enough about themselves. And it's an art form. It's hard to do. It's hard to pull that out of kids. So there's 2 types of questions. There are you questions, and there are creative questions, okay? You questions, provide a personal anecdote and lessons learned, find the story first and the message. Topic of your choice, there's an example, indicate a person who's had a significant influence on you. And then creative questions, really, there's an example. What idea, invention, discovery, or creation do you think has had the biggest impact on your life so far? UVA, I think last year had one that's for engineering that said if you could invent something that would sort of better your life as a 17-year-old kid, what would it be? And it was fascinating, actually. There were kids who their alarm clock would go off at the same time the shower started to start because it was hot when they got in, It's a creative question, right? So lastly, why us questions. So there's actually 3 types of questions. The why us questions often come from smaller schools. A lot of times liberal arts schools. They certainly come from most of the Ivies. But they will come from, smaller liberal arts schools, perhaps a Shippensburg, a Lycoming, whatever, because they want to know why us. Why? It's a different way of tracking demonstrated interest, because they're trying to see, did you just add me to your list, or do you really know something about me? And how are you going to convey that? So here's a sample, and I'm going to try and read it. So here's the question. Here's the beginning of it, all right? So this is all right, I'll just start reading it. One of the hardest decisions a hockey goalie ever has to make is what to get painted on his or her mask. When I first decided to get a custom paint job on mine, I wanted to truly reflect who I am. I could not be happier with how it turned out. The Capitol building sits on the right side to show where I come from. I'm very proud to live just outside the most powerful city in the world, and being directly exposed to the politics and activity common to DC has made me much more aware of and interested in current events and the inner workings of our government. The vicious Sandman from the Spider-Man comics is on the crown. Sandman isn't just a play on my last name, but also a symbol of how fierce and relentless I can be in the net and off the ice. I will do whatever it takes to reach my goals. The Autism Awareness Ribbon, the most important part, is on the left. My personality has been most significantly shaped by my autistic brother, Evan. Having a brother like him has taught me acceptance and driven me to volunteer with organizations like the Nova Cool Cats, a hockey team for kids with special needs. My mask isn't just a required piece of protection, but rather a canvas that shows who I really am. Hockey analysts always talk about the man behind the mask. I'd rather show myself off on the mask than hide behind it. Did you like it?
Yeah.
What did you like about it? It's about him. You like him? Yeah. I mean, I'm like, please come to my campus. I mean, I get goosebumps, right? Here's a kid who, and if never, this particular kid's, his brother's big time on the autism scale. I mean, you can't be in their home without that distraction, okay? And it just, that's where the energy goes from mom and dad. You learn a lot, but also he talks about, the fierceness of his goals. He appreciates where he grew up. There's just a lot to it. And you feel like he's comfortable kind of unzipping himself and exposing himself, and he does it through the mirror of the mask, which I think is pretty cool. So, all right, this one's gonna be harder for me to read. But some kids give essays a title, right? So this kid called his Picante. For a guy who's considered straight as an arrow when it comes to food, I can eat fire. For me, horseradish is equivalent to ketchup. I envision my dorm fridge to be full of Mrs. Renfro's crushed jalapeno sauce, a jar of hot peppers for those late-night sandwiches, and an economy-sized bottle of crushed garlic. As an Eagle Scout, I would never steal, so when I go to Taco Bell, I always tip the counter person $1 to get extra packets of the sauce labeled fire. If there are any left, I hoard them in a plastic bag that contains things like the hot mustard that comes with Chinese takeout. This is my emergency stash should I ever run out of Tabasco sauce. Whether it's fast food or home-cooked meal, it takes me about 10 minutes to spice my food until it's just right. By then, the food is getting cold, but if I did my job, there will be a small sheen of perspiration on my forehead after one bite. That is good eating. Seeing me in the cafeteria before noon will be a rare event. Salsa on cereal is a losing combination, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not really a morning person anyway. To me, a good morning would involve eating 2-day-old takeout brought back to life with garlic and a healthy dose of chili powder before heading off to class. If I'm lucky, a care package from home would include some of Mrs. Tula's homegrown Asian peppers. Those babies are so hot they give meaning to the words, take your breath away. One little bite and you're wide awake. They could be useful as an aid to staying up late to study, once your eyes stop tearing, that is. Meeting people won't be a problem for me. I'm a friendly guy, and folks in the cafeteria will probably gawk and have questions when I start preparing my dinner with condiments I pull out of my backpack. I'm used to being part of a team, and I'm totally willing to share. While I expect college to teach me many new things, I'll be happy to teach my fellow students the art of scalding their taste buds. I know the day will come when I finally have a dorm in the lodges that comes with a kitchen. That's when my friends will learn that I have a gift with marinade. Anything worth cooking has to be prepared the day before. Whether it's Italian food or my famous ribs, if I'm going to be proud of the meal, I need to do my prep work in advance. You can't eat meatballs you made that day. They need time to ferment. Like schoolwork, food never comes out quite right if you just throw it together at the last minute. What'd you learn about that kid?
Passionate about cooking.
Yeah, passionate about cooking. What else did you learn about him? He's an Eagle Scout. What else? Likes meeting people. He likes to be prepared. He's not a morning person. I mean, this is great. It's about food. I had a fight basically with his parents. They're like, he can't use that. I'm like, it's one of the best days I've ever read. What? They wanted him to be all heady and cerebral, and this kid went to UVA. UVA loved it. That's the other thing. They read so much, they love to print one and stick it on the bulletin board by the coffee pot. You've been reading stuff all day. You want to take a break and read something good.
Food is a metaphor for his life. His philosophy and his practices and his perspectives are revealed in it.
Right. Excellent point. Food is a metaphor for his life. And again, when kids can do that, and this is a pretty skilled writer, but this wasn't a first draft, okay? It's pulling it, and it's giving feedback, and it's asking, why'd you tell me that part, or this might really be your opening sentence. So I'm going to share a why us one. All right, so this is a University of Chicago prompt. How does the University of Chicago, as you know it now, satisfy your desire for a particular kind of learning, community, and future? Please address with some specificity your own wishes and how they relate to Chicago. 250 words or less. Less is more, okay? Being articulate and concise is an art form. We have to teach our kids how to do it. This whole traditional 5-paragraph essay, this essay writing stuff blows them away because there isn't the intro, the 3 supports, and we bring it all together. You can't do that in 250 words. That's like an intro sentence, 3 sentences, bring it all together, all right? So, the year is 1999. The location is a house in Northern Virginia. The setting is the upstairs bathroom. A 6-year-old boy stands on a step stool over a sink, endeavoring to unravel the mysteries of the universe. With unbroken concentration, he conducts his experiments, mixing together anything he can find in a paper cup. Shampoo? Sure. Toothpaste? Why not? Aftershave? Smells odd, but all real chemicals do, right? After examining the noxious stew, the scientist in the making steps down from his perch and falls into bed, satisfied but still craving more. That 6-year-old was me. Since then, I have had an insatiable drive to figure out the world around me. I played with chemistry sets and read about acids and bases, elements and atoms. 11 years after my late-night adventures, I conduct cellular biochemical experiments in a lab at the National Institutes of Health. The setting is different, but my desire for answers remains the same. The University of Chicago is where I want to continue my fascination with chemistry and American history and philosophy and politics. I want a school where groundbreaking research is conducted by undergraduates, even if it's done under the football field. I'd like to conduct my experiments in the Gordon Center while also discussing a recent lecture on the Civil War or long-lasting implications of race relations in America. Chicago will allow me to think, learn, discover, and propel me towards my lifelong dream of becoming a biomedical researcher. Again, that's great. But here's the beauty of this. He used that same essay for every why us, and he only had to change the bottom. Okay? So again, it's that's part of putting together a winning application is you don't bite off more than you can chew, right? One of the things we want kids to do is figure out their schools they're applying to. It's got to be an appropriate list. You got to have some foundation schools, we call them, and then you can build up to your penthouse if you want. But you got to have some foundations. Some people call them safe. I call them foundations, okay? And you can build up from there. But they then need to take every piece of writing required of all those applications and look for overlap. Because you don't want to start down one path. A lot of kids do this. They just do one application and they go to the next. They don't back up. Back up and look at it, okay? Don't get, and read. I mean, we're all guilty of this, right? You get an email and you're like, oh, that's a lot of words. And you're trying to pull out, does it matter? And then you put, mark it unopened and you'll come back to it. There's a lot to read about this. And when you're looking at college applications, you need to be back up, breathe, read, and be strategic. My big thing about this whole thing is be purposeful and be strategic. And think smart, work smarter. One of the big things for students is just brainstorming. They read a prompt and they sit there, okay? So I have a couple ideas for your kids depending on what grade they're in. One, they can go open up a Word document, take the 5 questions from the Common App, put 1 on each Word document, okay? Open it up. If they're a freshman, open it up once a month. Read the question. Did you have an ethical dilemma that month? Jot it down. Brainstorm over time, okay? Chronicle your life. You don't have to do the writing, but chronicle your life, right? Same with other questions, that are out there floating around if it's a school you're interested in. The other thing is, if they're older, okay, like I'll do with my juniors in May or I'll do with my seniors in the fall, I'll throw prompts at them and just tell them, just write. Just write until you're done. There's nothing left to say, and then go to the next prompt. So that's what these are, just some prompts for kids. We talked about the fact essays have to be about the student. They're the topic. They should highlight specific things. One thing, if a kid is really organized, and this is where, really, if you're going to be strategic about putting together a quality application, oftentimes for the kids that are applying to selective schools, is you're going to write your essays over the summer. And when you come in the fall, in an ideal world, you're going to sit and have a conversation with your counselor. Because if you go back to that blank piece of paper, right? Here's everything that we decided we wanted the college to know. Here's what got into my essays, because I did them over the summer, okay? Here's what I want my counselor to highlight, because I didn't write about it. Maybe I'm an Eagle Scout and I didn't write anything about my project, but it's pretty lengthy. It's pretty cool. Well, then I want my counselor to spend 1 or 2 sentences on it. Or maybe I wrote an essay about my Eagle Scout, and all I want my counselor to do is slide in an Eagle Scout. Johnny's an ideal student to teach, right? I just want him to slide it in there to validate the fact that I'm an Eagle Scout. So you want to work together, but you can't really work together if as a kid you're not out in front of it, all right? And I say this all the time, and I'll tell you probably 1 in 10 kids write their essays before their counselor writes the letter, all right? Now, I think counselors here ask for a set of questions. Do you guys do a packet? Okay. So counselor letter focuses on the entire student, right? They've probably, in an ideal world, had that kid for 4 years in high school. So they've watched this journey. They've watched them grow and develop from this sort of like squealy little, you know, insecure, awkward-looking thing into like a young woman or a young man by senior year, right? But they're summarizing the whole kid, right? What a teacher's job is to put the lens on the learner, okay? Teachers basically put a magnifying lens on a kid because they teach them in their class. The mistake teachers make is they don't know how to write good letters, so they ask a kid for a resume, okay? Don't give it to him, because guess what? Your counselor took that part. Again, we don't want to be redundant. We want to add, all right? So when I was at TJ, the majority of teachers in that building had their own set of questions. So if you went to Mr. Forbes in physics and you wanted a letter from him, he gave you a 2-page document, okay? Why'd you ask me to write for you, basically? What'd you get out of my physics class? I mean, they're a lot more detailed than that. But he's trying to pick their brain about their learning journey in his classroom. His job is to help summarize that learning journey. Kids think, oh, I have such a great rapport with my English teacher. Yeah, but she also taught 150 students last year. And if she's really that kind of a charismatic teacher, she's got a great rapport with most of them. And she remembers she had you 5th period and you sat in the back row and you talked to your friend Susie whenever you could. But she doesn't really remember that essay that you struggled with the first time, necessarily, or the fact that you weren't comfortable in Socratic discussions, or the fact, so kids have to kind of give that back to them. So I have a couple strategies to make that happen. But the biggest thing is if a teacher asks for a student resume, kids shouldn't give it to them. If I happen to also be your track coach, well, that's firsthand experience. Or if I happen to know that you're in student government because I hear you or see you on the news, I can say, well, when I got Robin in class, I wasn't sure what to expect because all I heard about was all she was doing outside of class. But whoa, what a student she was in the classroom. That's appropriate for a teacher to write, but not to take a whole paragraph and relist the resume. This is what ours looks like at Chantilly. We have a packet of questions. And again, I'm surprised every year how many parents don't do this. We're giving you a set of questions. We're basically asking you to take time to praise your kid, give us some detailed, write the letter for goodness sakes. If I like it, I might cut and paste it on letterhead. Because you're not going to lie to me, right? But you're going to help me because I got to write 70 letters. But I want them all to be good. So do your part. And students also have a set of questions. Is that how you do it here? Yeah, and again, it's fascinating. Some of them, the kid never hands it in. Some of them, the parent doesn't do their part. Some parents didn't know they even had a part because the kid didn't tell them, right? But you're here, so squeaky wheel gets the oil, you know it. You could probably go on your school's website and find it today. Now, it might change year to year because sometimes we change up the questions, right, to try to pull material. But don't take it lightly. Having said that, don't give me 10 pages because I'm only going to write a 1-page letter, maybe a 2-page letter. If you're going to a really selective school, maybe I'll write 2 pages. But if you give me 10, then guess what? I get to decide what 20% goes in the letter. So going back to being articulate and concise, being strategic and purposeful, going back to the blank piece of paper, decide what it is you really want me to say as the counselor, and give me that stuff. So again, the best time for you as a parent to do those questions is after your student wrote their essays. Again, I mean, really, we're talking about a journey here, and kids have worked really hard. How do you break it down and, make sure you maximize this cyber white space that's in a college application? So what I've done, because at Chantilly, my teachers don't have a questionnaire like the people at TJ, okay? I've gotten some of my faculty to buy into it. Our math department created a form. It's awesome. And they've got a questionnaire specific to math. But most of them don't have anything. So I tell the kids, fine, create your own memo or email. You write to them, you address the questions, okay? Mr. Smith, the reason I asked you to write for me is because, you know what, I was really nervous about going into physics. My dad keeps telling me I should be an engineer, I'm strong in math. I was nervous. I didn't really like it. Wow, thank you. When we did this, it turned me on to that. When we were studying this unit, I struggled, but I went home and here's what I did on my own. Here's primary source articles, whatever. You reflect back to them your learning journey, okay? What I want to know as a college is, how is class different when you're in it? How's class different when you're absent? When you come to my school, are you just going to sit there like an empty vessel expecting me to tell you what I want you to know and what day I want you to give it back to me? Are you coming and you're going to be a part of the learning process? If something comes quickly to you in my classroom, do you get on your phone? Or do you help the kid next to you who's struggling with it? What do you do when you're struggling? Where's your stick-to-itness? There's a lot a kid can say, okay? And that's what I want to know as a college, because I want to see you in my classrooms thriving, and I want to see you helping your peers, because learning is very different than when we went to school. There's no internet. Whatever they said, okay, must be fact. What day you want me to know it? It's changed, people. And they're like facilitators of learning now. They're like coaches. They're not know-it-alls, because they're also learning from their students. That's why students are engaging so much in undergraduate research with professors now, because they're moving along together. So again, if they don't have a questionnaire, create your own. +1, I talked about that. Basically what I mean is, do not do more than one additional letter than what the college asked for. You can do a +1 as long as you're giving me an angle that I haven't read somewhere else. But if it's going to repeat, don't give it to me. So activities and honors. Very important for kids to start chronicling what they do with their time. Colleges don't really care what they did in 7th and 8th grade. If they're a musician, they're continuing to be a musician, but they really want to know starting maybe summer before 9th grade. Some colleges actually have a spot on their application that says summer. Starbucks in the pool, maybe doesn't sell so well. And again, kids don't have to go do something, and you don't have to go overseas to do community service. There are lots of needs right here in Prince William County. There are a lot of needs. That's another thing that the college folks, we joke about, Oh, well, she went to Uganda, so she expects to get in. The bottom line is there are major needs right here in our community, and the best community service for a kid, in my opinion, is to take their talents and share them with their immediate community. I had a kid who was passionate about golf, was a member at a country club. He basically worked with the board. He created a day where people are going to donate used clubs, used balls, used gloves, used shoes. He had a U-Haul rented. It was parked on the premises. People came in, they were loading up that U-Haul. He had to go rent another one because of the number of people that came. And he took it down to DC to the first tee. How cool is that, right? Kids who are talented in the arts, put together a quartet, go to Sunrise Assisted Livings over the holidays, give them free concerts. Maybe you're into theater, put together a troupe, same thing, go to preschools or go to assisted living, do whatever. Use your talents in your community, okay? That is really community service. It's not showing up and decorating the gym for a dance and calling that service hours. When you get your hands dirty with community service, that says a lot about a kid to a college. And hopefully, they might start out to do it because of college, but the way they'll grow from doing it is a beautiful thing, right? We all know that. Giving back is giving back. Did I want to get up this morning and come here? No. Actually, not at all. My brother's in town for the first time in like 10 years, and we didn't go to bed too early, and I was like, oh. But I'm here. And you know what? I'm going to leave today going, hey, listen, you know what? I help people, right? That's my passion, is helping. So I have this set of questions, how to piece it all together. So these are some questions I want to make sure are answered in the application. Basically, did they take advantage of the curriculum and offerings? Too much is given, much is expected. Structural impediments, this is an interesting thing. I build the master schedule at Chantilly. I have one section of AP Music Theory. I have one section of AP Human Geography. I have one section of AP Art History. What if a kid wants 2 of those in the same period? That's a structural impediment. Or they can't get German 4 because it's the same time as AP Music Theory. I don't want a college to be like, oh, I wish they'd taken German 4. Work with your counselor. Remember, Mr. Smith, I couldn't take German 4 because, oh, that's right. That needs to be slid into a counselor letter. So structural impediments, when I'm a college, if I have a question while I'm reading your application, I'd like you to provide me an answer or else I'll find my own answer, okay? If your grade sophomore year tanked and you don't tell me why, I'm gonna think, whoo, were they like, what happened, right? I don't know what happened. Oh my gosh, there was a death in the family, or there was an illness they had, or they were concussed. Tell me something. Help me understand your journey, okay? I also do private work in college admissions, by the way. I can't take too many clients, but I do work one-on-one with families. So that's my private email. Now I got about 10 minutes for questions. So any questions? Yes?
How do you, when you're considering your letters of recommendation and you're talking about not going over how many they want you to include, how do you weigh who the letters are from in quality to choose the only two that you're going to choose that
Well, I would tell you, and I'm biased, I would tell you that a counselor letter is the best because they do summarize you as a whole person. They've known the kid for 4 years. And if you think you don't have a good counselor, I have parents who think that in my building. I think parents are not as aware of how much counselors do know their kid just because they didn't talk to them all the time. We get the newspaper, we read it. We listen to the announcements. We know if they were in the play or they were in the band or they were selected to be section leader. We may not see them all the time, but we're always making notes on things that are happening with our kids, okay? So first and foremost, that's a good person. When it comes to teaching faculty, it's typically a junior year teacher. And some schools will be specific and tell you if you're applying to engineering, they want a science or math teacher, so that's gonna drive it. And you don't want, 2 English teachers, because they're gonna say similar things. If you've been very active in an art, then you probably want your art teacher, be it performing arts or fine arts, plus you want a, core teacher. Usually, if there's two teacher letters, one should be from core, which would be English, math, science, social studies, or world language. And hopefully it's somewhere, some of the best letters actually come from the class where the kid got their only B, okay? Because you can tell me a lot about that kid. If I'm looking at a transcript and the kid has all A's, but I got the letter from the teacher where he got a B, I can get some context. So hope that helps. Yeah.
Where are the PowerPoints available from? Do we have to email you?
No, don't email me. I will give the PowerPoint to Becca Schlater, and she'll post it somewhere.
and then the pages she gave us probably.
Yeah, probably, right. Yeah.
So we have really large high schools. How do the counselors know, just like that average kid who's not in the newspaper and who's not a star on the football team or, not doing some kind of amazing thing, but just going to school, getting good grades, working hard?
It's a good question. Right. It's a good question. I mean, they should be, and again, I'm going to say shoulds, but they should be meeting with your kid every spring to do a backward design of their courses for the next year. In that conversation, I hope they're asking them, what activities are you involved in? Are you in church youth groups? Do you play league basketball? What's important to you? How many people are in your family? Like, there should be some exchange. And even if that just happens, once a year, that's more. But when you get to the packet, that's the time for a kid to reveal that stuff. And good counselors are going to meet with their kid. I mean, I always met with my kids and said, hey, I read your packet. Here's some things that stood out to me. Wow, I had no idea that you were born with this heart ailment and you couldn't participate in PE all through elementary school and you kind of felt ostracized by it. And then you found band and now you're like this big, drummer guy, right? I want to have a conversation. They're brief. It only takes me about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes to say to a kid, here's what I think I'm going to highlight. I'm not going to let you read my letter. But kids usually walk away going, well, that's me. That's good. That's kind of what I want them to do. So if they do their parts, they'll be well represented. And again, a lot of times that kid who is, and I hate the word average, because you know what? Here's what we need to do. The most important thing is that our kids feel loved and supported and that they're happy and they're healthy. Forget the rest of this stuff. That's paramount. If you got a healthy kid at home, if you got a kid that wakes up happy, maybe grouchy, but you know what I mean? That's a beautiful thing. And average is great in this area, and those kids are going to get into colleges. I mean, like I said at the beginning, English, math, science, social studies, world language, if you can take it every year, Never even have to take it to the honors level, but get a B average, you'll go to college, and you'll thrive.
Can I add something to that? So every year, the senior year counselors, we meet with the students one-on-one. We have something called senior interviews. So that's a chance that the students have about 10 to 15 minutes with the counselors. And so that's a good time for us to know the kid that, not average, but we don't have a lot of contact with. The quiet
Right.
kid. Because we do have a couple. So that's a good time to encourage your senior students to take advantage of the senior interview and talk, because we ask questions about what college you want to go, what your interest, what do you want me to write about you, and the packet like you mentioned.
And the other thing, quiet kids, I mean, Stillwater's run deep. And quiet kids, the other thing I tell them, if you got a quiet kid, that's fine. There's probably a subject that they like, especially if they're an academic quiet kid. And, get to class early, stay a little late, go in and before school starts. Interface with that teacher. If it's an area of interest to you, you'll have things to share. I mean, those kids sometimes get amazing letters. I mean, you think this kid is like everyone knows him is, there's a lot more to sell. We know what we're doing. I mean, we should know what we're doing. Okay?